The ego is a very funny thing because while it might provide us with the will, intention, and motivation to live life to its fullest, to go out there and explore life freely, to pursue our dreams, to be passionate about living, it could take that all away in just a second. That is, if we allow it to, because the ego is basically just how what you identify with, how you define yourself without your connection to your truth. Who and what you see yourself to be and deem yourself to be without knowing that you are an extension of source, that you are all just one, that you have the energy of all creation, of everything and everyone flowing through you. That is just the ego. And so that's why sometimes enlightenment could be seen as ego death, because you take away all of those ego constructs, you take away all that power from the ego, and you get more closer towards your truth. You get more closer to oneness, to just being, to pure consciousness. And while I am not against the concept of ego death, the way I like to look at it is more of aligning our egos with who we truly are, of giving awareness to the ego that we are more than just this 3D reality, that we are energy, that we are pure energy, that we have the energy of all existence flowing through us. And rather than just living through that ego and attracting through that ego, which does everything according to survival, based on survival, we let it know, we give it awareness that we are intentional conscious creators. Just like that little child, unaware or scared, threatened, it does not want anything to threaten its survival and its life. It starts making false definitions, it starts giving false meanings to things and believing in false things. And the way to replenish that, to heal that, is to deal with it as that young child, to approach the ego with gentleness and with care and with love, to make it one with your truth, to make it aware of your connection to source. Because since prehistoric times, the ego cared just about one thing. It's not doing this out of hatred to us or out of the need to fight and go against us. It does fight against us because it gets addicted to its constructs, but let me get into this later on. But since prehistoric times, it cared only about one thing, and that is surviving. It cared only how to survive and enhance its survival. And in its attempt to enhance its survival, it needs two things mostly. It needs safety, which is quite self-evident, and it needs to make sense out of life. It needs to make sense out of what it experiences in life. It needs to understand and know more, because knowledge is survival. Knowledge enhances your survival. Because think about this, if it cannot tell what leads to what, if it cannot tell that A leads to B and B leads to C, then it cannot take any step forward. It cannot go on and explore life and survive. And so in its attempt to make sense out of things when we were very young, at a very young age, it made sense out of things using false definitions, using false meanings. Those definitions come in the form as, I couldn't get that relationship, so I must be unlovable, or I must be socially awkward. I couldn't get that thing I want, so I must be undeserving. I couldn't find happiness, I must be unworthy of happiness. I couldn't win in this game, so I must be a loser, I must be a failure. And that especially happens if you did not have present parent figure, if you did not have a present available parent who were there for you whenever you needed them, who addressed all of your issues, who established open communication with you, and so that they would explain things for you. They would explain if you experienced something as a child, unable to make sense out of anything, something that terrified you perhaps, and they would come and explain to you why it was not maybe as terrifying, or why it's not as traumatizing, or why it's not really threatening to you, or that's just normal part of life and this happens to everyone, and they fed you with love and they taught you with love, then your ego wouldn't feel compelled to assign all those false meanings that I'm unworthy or I'm a loser why I'm not happy, why am I being bullied? Oh, I must deserve, hatred from life. I must be undeserving of happiness, of joy, of peace. And and that's even that even is greater when you did not have an available parent or an authoritarian figure in your life, like your kindergarten teacher or a healthy society that addressed and educated you in that manner. You start formulating all of these beliefs. So it's not really out of your ego, is just out of fighting against you and hating you, but it's more just all about surviving and enhancing it as survival. And so when it makes sense out of things, it knows what to expect, and it could go as far as to expect the worst out of any experience that it encounters, because if it expects the worst, if you live in the worst case scenario and visualize it, then anything that could happen would be less severe, because you already expected and lived through the worst case scenario. But the thing is, the ego is not aware that by us living through that worst case scenario and expecting it and visualizing it, we are actually attracting and manifesting it into our reality, because it's not aware of our connection, of our truth, of our infinite power and infinite potential. It just sees from that perspective of survival. It just knows how to survive. And that's why we need to introduce this concept to it with gentleness and with love, to make it aware. It's just like the concept of making the subconscious conscious, almost the same. And I had a recent video about that if you're interested. And in doing that, as we grow older, with those definitions, with those meanings, and by the way, what I'm saying, this is not to blame your parents or to blame your kindergarten teacher or to blame the society, because more often than not, that was what they could do to the best of their abilities. Our parents, or at least that's all they knew, and since that's how they were raised, that's how they were nurtured, and since their birth till the time they gave birth, they were not triggered, they did not encounter a lesson that triggered them to challenge those ideas, to go against those ideas and formulate new ones. And so they just kept recreating them until they passed it on to us, for us to actually address and heal, because we are the ones, you are the one, the chosen one, to actually shift your reality, to overcome generational and ancestral traumas and patterns, to overcome your ancestral patterns. And in doing this, the ego grows up to live through that. It becomes like the thing, the deepest part to yourself that controls your life from the shadows. It dictates what happens. It becomes your manifestation center, your point of creation. Because no matter what you try to achieve and do through your conscious efforts and your conscious mind and your conscious actions, it's going against 20 or 30 or 40 or whatever, how long years of the opposite, of you believing that you are undeserving, that you are a loser, that you are a failure, that you are unworthy of happiness, that you are unworthy of success, that you deserve to be in lack, that you don't deserve love. And when you're doing that, when you try to go against that without addressing the root causes, without really taking away the power from this ego and introducing it to your truth, to your loving and joyful truth of being one with source, of being one with everything in existence, then it won't work well. It will, and if it works one time, it could be, you could recreate the opposite again time after time, because you did not heal the root cause, the real efforts, the real reasons why your life is going in that direction you don't want. Because your life is just, your external reality is just a reflection of who you are internally. And if you find that your life externally is not going according to who you believe yourself is internally, then there might just be something that's controlling and dictating who you are from a deeper level, from the shadows. And that's when you ought to think, ought to address, what is it really that my ego had constructed? What definitions, meanings, and identifications have been constructed by my ego throughout my life that are keeping me, that are limiting me, that are blocking me from shifting my life, shifting realities, manifesting what I want in life. Because you see, as you grow up, there's this very interesting aspect to us. It's part of our brains, and it's called the DMN, the default mode network. You could guess already what it is from what it is called. The default mode network starts formulating in our brains at about the age of 7, which is the time about the age which our egos are being established, firmly established. And the DMN basically dictates whatever is real and whatever is not real in your life. It tells you what to expect out of anything. It tells you that A leads to B and B leads to C. It tells you that this could be dangerous, that this could be threatening to your life, that this is going to make you happy, that this is going to make you sad, that this is bad, that this is good. All of this dual aspect, dual judgment, it's all coming from the ego, because the DMN is what the ego had constructed. It is. So think about before that time, before the age of 7, 8, when you were just a very curious child, at the age of 5 or 4, and you were open to everything. You were still making sense out of life. You were trying to give meanings to life, and you were challenging all of these realistic and practical ideas. Oh, why can't I fly? Why can't I walk through solid objects? Why can't we see ghosts? Why don't ghosts exist? Maybe you have even seen a ghost, seen something. You've seen some form of a spirit, but then as your ego establishes that they are not important for your survival, that you're just going to be thought as a crazy person if you continue to think that way, then it removes them from that part of your reality, and that's how it dictates your reality, and it gives you different meanings. It tells you, oh, you cannot fly. Maybe we can fly. Maybe if we believe it 100%, 101%, maybe we could even fly in this 3D reality. But all of this is taken away by the ego constructs, and the DMN, the default mode network, dictates what is reality for you beyond that age. And it starts and keeps building on that and building on that until you reach the age where you're basically unchanging. There's nothing that's challenging you, and you're not thinking differently about anything, and it stays stagnant, which might as well be, death, be the end of this cycle in your life, this reincarnation or whatever. And that's the thing. As we grow older, we only attract according to what is in that DMN. And it's very actually interesting, the DMN, because they did a study on the relationship between the DMN and how it reacts to people on psychedelics. So the relationship between the DMN and psychedelics, and the results are very, very interesting. It shines the light on why we actually the way we are, and what do we actually see as the truth, and might it not be the absolute truth, what we are seeing through this 3D reality. Why might even the things you see on psychedelics might even be truer than what you are normally seeing. Those are all, through that findings, through the results, you could indicate many things. It's very, very interesting. And so when we grow older and we start attracting, we start living, and we start creating experiences, everything is created according to this constructs, according to your ego constructs. And the more you take away from the ego's power, the more you try to challenge it, the more it fights back, the more evident it makes those constructs to be. And that's why it becomes addictive. So think about that time when you wanted to feel happy, when you felt happy, but then right away you felt something wrong is going to happen. Why am I feeling joy? Why am I feeling happy? I know I've been conditioned. I know that whenever I feel joy for some time, something bad really happens. Something threatening, a threatening experience is going to come. That's all just your ego construct. That's your ego thinking that in being sad, in being undeserving, in feeling like a failure, in feeling like a loser, that is safety. Once we go above these emotions, above these self-imposed beliefs, something bad is going to happen. It's not going to be safe. It's not going to be a survival zone. And that's why it tries to pull you back in using whatever power. It's not out of hatred or going against you, but here at this point it fights against you because it is addicted to what it believed it is for a very long time. And now when you try to go against that, you're going against 20, 30 or 40 years of self-beliefs, of limitations, of ideas and constructs that shaped your life. So unless you really take the power away from them to begin with, it's going to be very difficult, because it will reaffirms you, and the way it makes it brings up feelings within you are going to make you actually attract and manifest something that affirms that those preset constructs. So you're going by feeling. The moment you challenge it, that's what they call trials. That's why you experience such trials, and they tell you that before you really break through a generational pattern, you will be put through tests. And the reason is because you are actually creating those tests through your ego going against who you're trying to be, and the byproduct is just something else that is trying to tip the scales, in a sense, which you are really, because you are gonna keep going against yourself within your head. Am I this or am I that? I'm trying to do this, I'm doing everything I could, I am actually breaking through, but I feel this and that, and I keep feeling, and I feel bad, and I shouldn't, and this breakdown, this contrast creates something that forces you to choose one side, basically. So in order for you to shift your reality, to shift your life, you need to address that. You need to go away. You take the power away from your ego, and doing that is through, I don't want to just tell you meditation, but the best way is meditation. But to me, it's through many different forms. If you just find that part of your day, that hour in your day, to just not be who you are taught to be, not be what you are identified and defined with. And I'm not telling you to even affirm all of these things while on meditation and see this and visualize the opposite of what you're experiencing. By just relaxing, just going into that deep meditative zen, relaxed, calm state, that is taking power away from your ego, because your ego is always active. It wants to live constantly through what makes it feel safe, what enhances its survival, and that is to have a continuous flow of thought, to keep feeling the same way, to keep thinking the same way, to keep acting the same way. And when you take that away from it, you are introducing it to your power. You are introducing it to your source, to the source. You are telling it that it's more than just that, because it thinks that by you sitting idle, or by you feeling that joy or peace in meditation, then you are threatening its survival. It's it's to that degree. And when you let it know that it's not that way, that you are actually safe, when you remain calm and keep insisting being consistent with who you are, with knowing, with identifying with your truth rather than with your ego, then it's going to come to know that you are actually safe, even as without all of those constructs that it had formulated. And then it's going to awaken to your truth. It's going to awaken to the truth that we are more than just this 3D construct, that we are more than just this 3D reality. We are more than the ego. Other things is just, to really notice your actions, to really notice what is, and to me that's what I was doing, to know, try and study and observe and notice what is coming as a byproduct of your ego. What is an egoistic construct? What is an egoistic reaction that I'm having? Whenever I do try to do something, or I feel like, in a way, I ask, is this coming from my ego? I try to, at least, is this coming from my ego, or is this inspired, or is this from my connection to source, or is this coming from my true self? And in order to become aware of what is coming from your ego and what is not, you have to really go deep into your shadow. You have to really explore your shadow, and that is what they call shadow work. You know, you have to be very observant of everything you feel, you act, you think, you believe in life. You know, even the smallest of things. Even if you just, swiftly thought, you looked at yourself in the mirror and you thought, oh, I look bad today, or I look sad, or I don't look good in this t-shirt or in this dress or in whatever. Ask yourself why. Where is this coming from? What am I imposing upon myself? What preset constructs am I living upon based on them? And with this, even in the smallest of things, why did I take this drink? Why did I grab, this drink in that way? Why did I do this thing spontaneously? Why did I turn on the TV? Why did I go out? Why did I choose to put on this shoes? Even why did I choose this t-shirt? Why did I choose this, anything? If you really remain consistent with this observation, with this kind of observations for some time, everything is going to become evident. You're going to see clearly through yourself, and you will be very proficient with your shadow work. You will know what's coming from your ego. You will know what is coming from your conscious intentional creation and what is coming from an egoic creation or egoistic creation. And so if you cannot see what you want reflected in life, although you believe that you are becoming this thing internally, then ask yourself, what constructs are limiting me? What is my ego really trying to do? What is it holding on to because it thinks that's safety and survival? And that's why basically it all happens. That's how the ego is the ultimate limitation to who you're trying to become, or how you are trying to shift your reality. The ego basically just reacts to anything through survival, just a fight or flight, fawn or freeze reaction, and each of them is out of survival. The freeze is the procrastination, fawning is you trying to suck up to someone in order to try and survive. Flight and fight, are pretty evident. You are always fighting for something, you are trying to survive so desperately, and you keep on living and attracting through that point, through that center, for your entire life, unless you really take away that power from your ego and become more and more one with your source. That's it for today, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to share, subscribe, and share with anyone you think might need to hear this. Thank you for tuning in.